Alrighty. Let me try something a little different than usual. So I do videos kind of like this on my YouTube and Instagram and stuff. I want to try actually live streaming one, and then we'll just take the recording and put it where it needs to go. So I think you can find my YouTube in my profile in here on Twitch. Instagram's Brooks Brown Coaching, if you want to take a look over there as well. But there's something that I've wanted to talk about for a while. It's an idea I've had for a long time, and it sort of peaks, and I have moments where I'm like, man, I really got to get this out, and then I kind of forget about it. Other stuff comes up. But in light of recent events, I wanted to go ahead and talk about it. So really what I want to get at is how to effectively and ineffectively persuade people. And I don't mean this in the idea of like any type of selling technique or on a business side, but more just generally in your regular life. I think the way people go about trying to change someone's mind now is so broken, and we're seeing it so much. You know, our culture is just totally consumed with politics and social issues all the time, and very polarizing ones. So there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of emotion about what it is they believe, and it's good to have things you care about. That's good. I would encourage people to be conscious of what it is you care about. Like, make sure you're putting your energy in the right place. But that's probably a different video. So what I see a lot right now is people who are very passionate about what it is they believe, and it's not enough for them to just believe it themselves. They need other people to believe it too, which I think can be very dangerous in a lot of ways. I think it's a big problem with our society as a whole right now, is that people can't just do what they do and be happy about it. They need to have dominion over the people around them. And unfortunately, it just doesn't really work. People have ideas. Let's say one of the most obvious right now is liberal or Democrat or Republican. And, there's a huge spectrum. We get into liberal, conservative, left, right, all that stuff. But to keep it simple, let's say Democrat and Republican, just because we're seeing so much of that right now. And this is what kind of got me thinking about it again, was the presidential debates and vice presidential debate. But then, of course, also everything we're seeing on the news with riots and all that. So think about the last time you saw two people get into a debate where... And I mean, with the presidential debates, they're not trying to convince each other that they're right. They're trying to convince the audience that they're right. But think about it in terms of any type of debate where two people are trying to convince the other person they're wrong and that they need to come to their way of thinking. Well, it doesn't ever happen. Ever. There's never two people that get into a heated argument where they're attacking one another, and then at the end of it, somebody's like, oh, you know what? You changed my mind. You're right. That extremely, aggressive argument you made me feel like I wasn't right and you are, and now I'm going to go to your way of thinking. Never happens. Ever. Because even if somewhere in that argument somebody feels like, ooh, you know what? They've just pointed something out that I didn't realize before, and maybe they are right. Well, if you've attacked this person, now it becomes an ego thing. Like, they can't concede their point. They have to stick to their guns. And so they're not going to come over to your way of thinking. And I think that's where we've gotten to a place where, with things like riots in the streets, where there are a group of people that believe that what they're doing is right, and they believe everybody should believe the way they do. But they've gotten to such an excited state that they can't just go on with it themselves. And when they try to convince other people, it ends up being violent sometimes. And, as of this stream, there was a man killed just a couple of days ago in a a political march, and two people got aggressive with one another, and who knows what the real instigator was and what happened. We'll never know, because we just have the media to rely on, and so it's pretty much nothing. But one guy pulls out mace and one guy pulls out a gun, and the gun wins, and they're having essentially an argument over politics, which is insane. Not to disagree over politics. I think it's normal to disagree over ideas, but the fact that somebody died because of it is idiotic. Both of them. I mean, you hate to say it about someone that's dead, but both of them to put themselves in such a heightened scenario over two people that I'm sure neither of them have met, the president or Joe Biden. I'm sure they don't know them personally, and someone lost a life over it. That is insane, because they needed someone to believe what they believed. And it's just not an effective way to do it, to attack other people's beliefs. It doesn't ever work. If anything, you radicalize people. And we've seen that throughout history. I mean, you can think of governments where totalitarian rulers, where they have overthrown an entire government. Think of somewhere like Soviet Russia, or Germany was a little different. They kind of voted him in. But you think like a Bolshevik Bolshevik revolution in Germany that ends up creating in Russia that ends up creating the Soviet Union. What you ended up having was a lot of people who were rebelling against that. A lot of people who did not agree with what happened because they're forced into this place, and it doesn't breed harmony. So even if you get people to believe what it is you believe and accept it, they resent it. And that's the same thing now. If you go out and you shout somebody down and get them to, at least on the outside, get rid of their beliefs to go along with you because you become so aggressive that they just have to, they're always going to resent it. They're not really going to accept this thing. I'm sure maybe some people get Stockholm syndrome and they're just easily pushed around, and maybe you get away with it for a little while, but I still think it bubbles up. So it's just not an effective plan. And so I say all that to say, I think the more effective way of doing all of this, and I don't know how, it's something that people have forgotten, because I think we all know it deep down. If you have something that you really do think is a good idea and a better way of thinking, then just show people the positive. Why be aggressive and show them the negative side? Because, if somebody's trying to convince me of something, and this is the example I kind of like to give. I have two, but like veganism. I'm not a vegan. I don't ever see myself being a vegan. But I've had discussions with vegans and vegetarians of different types, and there's one way I see more effective way of kind of conveying what they believe, and one really ineffective way. So if somebody comes at me because I eat meat and they want to like call me a murderer or whatever because I eat dead animals, then if somebody really wants to get in my face and they want to make up health facts about eating meat and how horrible it is for you and everything, I don't believe that. I do think there are things in factory farm meat that are terrible for you, but that's a whole different story. So anyway, if they want to come at me for eating, grass-fed meat, and are really aggressive about it and feel like they have some sort of moral superiority, I've never once looked at that argument and been like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. It just makes me want to go eat a steak. And I don't even really like steak that much. It's just that kind of thing where you get entrenched and you're like, this is nonsense. Like, I'm not buying this. However, I have talked to people who are vegan and vegetarian who say, you know what, this is my decision. And it's something that I just do for me. Like, I don't feel comfortable eating animals. It like makes me sad to think about killing an animal, or I think it's better for my health. Like, I feel better when I do this. Right on, go for it. And I'm not going to try to talk them out of it. I might say, hey, I could never do it, but hey, more power to you. If that's what you want to do, go for it. Because I think that's the way it should be with anything. If you want to do something, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, by all means, go ahead. You know, and as long as you don't try to force it on me or other people, I think it's fine. And as long as you don't, I think that's where you get in trouble, is trying to force those things on other people. So, you know, I would be much more inclined to maybe not like go vegan or vegetarian, but maybe one day a week where I was vegetarian. If somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you know what? Rather than like shouting you down and demonizing you for eating meat or like butter or something if you're vegan or whatever, would you be willing to try a vegan dish that I made?" You know, if somebody could make a really good vegan, I don't know what. I'm not talking about like a black bean burger. Sorry, vegetarians and vegans, y'all only think those taste good because you forgot what meat tastes like. You know, maybe that's a little hypocritical to say that in this video, but that stuff does not taste like meat. So give me something good. Give me a different dish that's not like imitating meat, vegan or vegetarian. And if it's good, then I would, you know, consider a meal out of the day or like once a week, I would try this. But if you just like shout me down for what I'm doing, I'm not going to come to your way of thinking. So my whole point there is, if you really believe in something and you want to sway people, show them the positive aspects. You know, whether it be like political or social or whatever it may be, whether it's religion or something like that. I mean, think about the stuff that's been done in the name of religion. What's a better plan to bring people to your way of thinking? To show them like the loving aspects of your religion and the beautiful side of it, or go kill people that don't believe in it? That's nuts. Then you just become a zealot, and people are like, well, there's absolutely no way ever that I could ever become a part of this religion because I've seen what they've done in the name of it. You know, that's not a winning proposition. You end up painting yourself in a corner. And again, even if people convert under, you know, under the pressure of your boot on their neck, they're going to resent you and eventually will probably revolt. Like it's not going to work out. So show people the positive aspects of what you believe and let them come to it on their own. Another one that I think of is, you know, environmental issues. We see so many people, you know, think of even like environmental terrorism and stuff. Like, what in God's name is that? That is crazy. And we have all these people going around on TV and demonizing people for, you know, driving a car or going to their job or whatever. And, you know, of course, they all like go to these meetings on private jets and SUVs and have 5,000 square foot houses that ACs run nonstop and put more carbon in the air than anything you can imagine. But, you know, that's again, a whole different video, maybe on the hypocrisy or really the people that are pulling the strings. But I think the better method, I've lived in some really beautiful places and I've gone to some really beautiful places. And, you know, I've lived at the beach for a while, like on the ocean, the Gulf of Mexico. It's the most beautiful beaches in the world. I've gone out to West Texas where you can see for literally 50 miles mountaintops when the sky is clear, and, you know, gone through Big Bend and just seen like incredible rock formations and beautiful water, and, you know, traveled to the center part of the country where there's just unbelievable view, just stuff you can't imagine, where you look at it and you go, this is worth protecting. And I think that's the better way to go about it, because if you see that beautiful stuff and you see like wild animals and their natural environment and how beautiful that can really be when it isn't affected by pollution or, you know, smog that blocks out the stars at night when you're in the middle of nowhere and you can like see the Milky Way, that is a way more persuasive argument or persuasive point than being like, the world's going to explode in 8 years because of global warming. That's just silly. And nobody goes, it's too absurdist, and people write you off completely. And so they say like, well, none of this matters. Well, yeah, like it does. Like it is important to not destroy the environment we have. But I really think if you would take people and show them the beauty of it, rather than demonize them for what they're doing, you can have some sort of harmony together, rather than creating two groups. Because then you create the environmentalist and the non-environmentalist, which is not a thing. Like, I don't think there's people that are like, yes, we just have to destroy the planet. I don't think that's out there, but it is an idea that people have created in their mind that these groups are totally split. Most people like living on Earth and would want to protect it if they can see the beauty of it. And that can be hard when you're in the middle of a city and you don't really, you get to see the outside. But I think that's just a way better idea of doing this stuff. Like, I remember when I was little, we had maybe they're like National Geographic movies or something. I mean, we had all the books too, but used to, in nature shows, they just showed you nature and like talked about animals and different parts of the world and different environments and the cool things that were there and facts about it. And it was like awe inspiring, where it made you want to be like, it made you want to go to these places, and it made you want to take care of that. So hopefully one day you got there and it wasn't destroyed by the time you made it to that place in the world or to see these animals. And now I turn on stuff on TV and it's just like shaming human beings, like environmental shows that could be something so much better, and they inherently just shame people because, you know, the world's going to catch on fire or whatever. It's not effective. I turn it off, and I am an avid supporter of protecting the environment in any way you can, but in real ways, like not shouting people down. Like, go out and pick up some garbage. Before you tell somebody that they're destroying the environment with their car, you better have done something for the environment. So, I mean, not to get on that environmental tangent, but I just, you know, show people the positive before trying to shout people down with the negative, because it just does not work. You're not going to gain followers in that way. You need to show them the light, not like make them seem like the darkness. And again, like if you don't believe me, step back. This isn't a theory. This is 100% true. Like, I'm right about this. Look through history and see what has happened when you've taken countries or populations or whatever, and you have just shouted them down or controlled them with violence or shamed them into oblivion. It never, ever works. You know, I mentioned Soviet Russia, about a group of people that kind of took over a huge country, and then there's a lot of revolution, a lot of death, and a lot of pushback. And then there's also this incredible paranoia, because you know that you've brought these people to your way of thinking in a way that's like not sustainable. So people have to do things to destroy any kind of pushback. So that's where they ended up with, you know, gulags and political prisoners and stuff, because they were scared to death that people were going to rise up, because they knew that the way that they did it was wrong. And we saw it in, you know, the over shaming of people, which that's the way people try to get their idea across now. Think about what I'm sure you've seen. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure you've seen it. I guess it depends on what kind of media you consume or who you choose to follow. But there have been a lot of videos in the past few months of people in restaurants being accosted by a certain, I forget what they call themselves, not political, activist group, maybe. I guess that's one way of putting it. But going into restaurants and disturbing people when they're eating and forcing them to leave based on their race, which happened in the past. History tends to repeat itself more and more recently. But forcing people out of restaurants based on the color of their skin, and then forcing them to do things like hold a fist in the air or say a certain individual's name. Or, you know, attacking people because of a hat they're wearing. This doesn't go anywhere good. Guarantee it. There has not been one person who has been made to be afraid in a restaurant because of their color, or made to say something that ended up following that afterwards. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. There has not been, and I've seen tons of those videos recently, there has not been one person in a restaurant that was made to say Black Lives Matter that ended up joining a march after that. At least not for Black Lives Matter. And that's the scary thing, is when you do stuff like this and you shame people and you force your ideology on them, they're usually going to go the other way. And now people are wondering, like, well, how are there so many, how is like white supremacy coming back? Well, we've really shamed white, especially white young men, for a long time in schools. And It's not good. It is not good. And what they're doing in return is not good. But we can't do this stuff. Like, shaming people into your way of thinking has not ever and will not ever work. You can take that to the bank. And, that's like the modern idea of it. And there's a ton of groups of people that are having this stuff forced on them right now. But here's another one for you. Germany, World War One. The world went to war. World War One. All said and done, tons of countries ended up getting involved. There's fighting back and forth all over the place. When it's over, the entire war is blamed on Germany. The whole thing. And then they make them sit down and sign this treaty where they have to, in writing, like, claim that they started all of this and it's all their fault. And then they're forced to pay reparations to all these countries in unfeasible amounts. Like, the money doesn't exist. It destroys their morale, not their morality, but it destroys their morale so bad, and it destroys their economy so bad that it allows someone like Adolf Hitler to seem like a good idea. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. You overshame people and beat people down with your ideology rather than showing them something good, that you allow something super crazy to happen. And I'm really afraid that's what's coming in this country, in a lot of different groups. Like, we've shamed certain groups of people enough, whether it's somebody's privilege or their race or whatever, or their gender. It's crazy how divided people are. But everybody wants to just shove their ideology down somebody's throat rather than being like, hey, look how good it can be. It's not a winning proposition. It's creating a lot of anger, so much division, but it's opening up this place for radicals. And like I said, we're seeing it on both sides. Like, you're seeing people now in the streets that are fighting for what seems like crazy stuff, but they're so tired of being pushed down that they've had enough. And I really do think things are going to become radical. I think stuff like white young males are in a scary spot because they've been shamed bad. So, for things that they have not done. And, I just mentioned that group because it's one that I'm familiar with because of people I work with, but it's out there. That kind of ideology is all over the place. And I think environmentally, the same kind of thing. People have been shamed so much and they've heard so many absurdist arguments that, like, the world's going to explode. Like, we're all going to be dead in 8 years or 10 years or whatever it is now. That people have written the whole thing off. And we don't need to. Like, we need to protect the earth. We need to do stuff like that. But when you go so far one way, rather than just showing people the light, you just cloud them in darkness, they fight their way out. So we can't do that. So think about that. If you have something that you think other people need to know, or you think you're doing something better, then help people see that. Try to bring them to that, show them the light, bring them into that way of thinking rather than forcing them to stop doing whatever they're doing. Because just remember, if you have a good idea, and you think about this sort of government-wise, ideas that are good do not have to be enforced with laws and guns. They just don't. We can bring people together and we can agree on something, and people, if it is a good idea, it's benevolent, it's the best thing for the greater good, people will see that and come to it. And if you ever find yourself in a position where you think my ideas are so good that we have to imprison people or kill people that disagree with it, it's a bad idea. So think about it. If you can come up with other examples, let me know. I'd be interested. There's tons of them out there. You probably have examples in your own life that you could think of. But yeah, I think a lot of this gets solved by people having a genuinely more positive attitude. Quit being afraid of your neighbors. Most people aren't bad. Most people in the media are. So, so that's what you see. If it bleeds, it leads. So we do see the crazy stuff, like people getting shot at political rallies and all that. But I mean, that is real. It's just not the majority. So if we can, don't let that sway who you are. Try to keep that positive mindset, and just, as you're creating these good ideas or seeing them, show people the good side. Don't tell them why their idea is bad. Show them why your idea is good. So, I'll probably start doing this more often. Just getting on Twitch in the morning, talking for a little bit, and then I'll, do my regular streams later on in the day. But if you enjoyed it, or if you didn't enjoy it, and the next time I talk, you want to get on here and have something to say in the chat, then follow, and then you'll know when it's coming. But I think I'll probably start doing this in the mornings. It's oh wow, it's 10:45 now. I'd like to do this a little earlier now that I have the equipment set up. So probably, I don't know, maybe starting around 9 a few days a week. I'll get on here and do this. And then we'll have like the regular gaming streams sporadically. So, appreciate you watching. Drop a follow if you catch it on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. And talk to you again soon.